What's up, guys? I'm Chris Spags here, back in another NBA video that we're calling the Four Corners, courtesy of Awesemo.com. As you may have seen last week during the first video of these, I'll be taking you through on all the major NBA slates, the four main items, players, and games that I'm looking at in order to help build lineups today on DraftKings, FanDuel, and of course Yahoo. So make sure to like this video right now and leave a comment down below telling me which player or game you're thinking the most about so far. Let's get the conversation going, guys. I'm going to be doing these videos pretty frequently, so I want to make sure that we're all engaged and talking about it. And of course, I'll be checking the comments and dropping in if there's anything that I can help address. The first corner I want to talk about today, a game with the Hawks and the Wizards. It's a game with a 232.5 combined total, which is going to be the highest on today's slate. First guy in the game I want to talk about here is Trae Young. 4 of his last 5 games, he's been above 43.5 fantasy points here. And even though he's gotten a lot of flack because he is probably the weaker part of that trade for Luka Doncic, he's actually been coming into form pretty well, shooting more, as well as showing some really steady assist upside in each of his games. Young has struggled versus the Wizards this year, but with the way he's been playing recently, I think this could be a spot where he gets back on track. A big question I have is whether or not you can trust John Collins in this game, coming off of one of his biggest games of the year versus Phoenix last time out. Collins' upside hasn't been that consistent lately, and I think with the way that game resulted in a lot of offensive rebounds for Collins, I think you're unlikely to see a recreation today, even though the Wizards are pretty weak inside. There simply aren't that many times you're going to see an offensive player reach 10 offensive rebound upside here, which also creates a lot of easy putback opportunities. I think that was an outlier game for Collins, but one that we won't see recreated today versus the Wizards. One player whose efforts do seem a bit more repeatable is Tomas Satoransky. In 2 games versus the Hawks this year, he's put up 36.5 fantasy points and 43.75 fantasy points. Again, both those games he picked up the start. Same situation here. I think his upside in terms of assists and peripherals goes up quite a bit here versus the Hawks team with how they're constructed. Otto Porter is currently the highest projected owned player on DraftKings according to our ownership projections at Awesemo.com, and honestly that worries me a bit here. I think Porter's a fine play, but as a starter his usage isn't that reliable, and I honestly just don't think he's that great of a play. He's shown some upside versus the Hawks this year. His one game that he was healthy, he actually had a pretty big day, but overall I don't know that I want to trust Otto Porter enough if he is going to be the chalkiest player on the slate. One guy I might be a little intrigued by, who's also a wing, Jeff Green. He put up 16 and 17 shots as moving to the bench. Those were less favorable matchups the Wizards have had. This one here versus the Hawks, he could really get going here if he does see that offensive opportunity in front of him. The next corner here that I want to hit on, a game with the Rockets and the Suns, and this is one where I think there might be some concerns about a blowout, but the Suns have been looking pretty good, and the Rockets really haven't been blowing people out outside of that last game versus Utah. The 227.5 combined total is one of the highest on today's slates, and it also represents a 3.6 point boost for the Suns, as well as a 5.1 point boost for the Rockets here. So those are 2 pretty big noteworthy cosigns here from Vegas on both teams excelling relative to their season averages. DeAndre Ayton returned to the lineup for the Suns last game, and with the Rockets really struggling versus true bigs recently, I think he's in a great spot here with him getting a full minutes load and also having no real matchup here who should be able to limit him too much on the Rockets side. Devin Booker's been looking more like the point book play that we've been used to in previous stints here, with Elie Okobo taking a little bit less of a primary ball handling role as a starter here. Devin Booker's had a 31.7% usage rate, as well as a 57.25 and 60.5 fantasy points in his last 2 games. One a tough one versus the Spurs, and one a less tough one versus Atlanta. I like what I'm seeing in terms of Devin Booker's role in the offense with his usage rate back up, and I also think that Devin Booker's a guy who, when he's a hot hand, you're going to want to play him a little more often than you would otherwise. Mikal Bridges and Josh Jackson are 2 mid-priced value guys with some upside here. Mikal Bridges has been actually excelling pretty well relative to his opportunity, whereas Josh Jackson actually hasn't been shooting that well, but he's still been having some big days, so he might have some more upside here. Bridges looks like a pretty decent play. His price is up a little bit, so there might be some risk if his shot doesn't fall today, but Jackson could have some real upside if things break his way. Eric Gordon's already been ruled out, though he is expected to return back to the lineup later this week. It could mean more shot opportunities for James Harden as well as Chris Paul, and it could mean some extra minutes for Gerald Green, who has shown that he can excel if given an opportunity to score in a limited run. But I'm still in Kenneth Faried here. I think at his current price he does have some upside, as long as the game doesn't get out of hand. Third corner I want to talk about here on today's slate is a game with the Nuggets visiting the Pistons here, one in which Gary Harris has already been ruled out, Jamal Murray and Paul Millsap are currently questionable. If all those guys are out, Nikola Jokic is a stronger play, Monty Morris and Malik Beasley become more secure, and Trey Lyles and Mason Plumlee could see more run filling in for Millsap. Harris being out should open some more opportunity for both Malik Beasley and Monty Morris, more so for Beasley, but with both those guys' prices up a bit, if Murray's in, I'd be less interested for sure, given that he's likely to soak up quite a bit of the usage that Harris's absence leaves behind. But even if Murray and Millsap are in, I'm still quite a bit interested in Nikola Jokic here. He's coming off of a bit of a down game by his standards, but I think in this spot versus Detroit, he really is a strong matchup against Andre Drummond, and one who could get quite a bit of what he wants here. Along with that extra usage that Gary Harris's absence leaves behind, he could be a smash play. On the other side, Blake Griffin's shot attempts have been up quite a bit recently. He's been over 23 shots in 6 out of his last 8 games. That's up from 18.8 shot attempts on the year. Regardless of the motivation here, if Paul Millsap is out or even if he's in, Blake Griffin might be in a very strong spot here given the fact that the Nuggets are very likely to be in this game until the end, and it's more a matter of if the Pistons can stay in there and hang with the Nuggets at home. Andre Drummond is still $8,200 on DraftKings, and that price point's pretty appealing for him even though the matchup versus Jokic isn't that great with how Jokic has been really doing a good job limiting opposing centers recently, particularly on the boards. Ish Smith has been back in the lineup, but it hasn't affected Reggie Jackson's opportunity thus far. Jackson is over 29.5 fantasy points in his last 5 games. He's also been over 42 fantasy points in his last 2, last of which includes Ish back in the lineup here. I know Reggie Jackson's not a player that people like to trust, but at him projected for under 20% ownership today and on a really nice hot streak in which he's also just shooting a ton and very involved in the offense, could be a nice spot for him here that people won't be in on at high volume. But again, the injury news here is key to watch. This is the first game on tonight's slate, so you'll get that news before lock. Make sure to keep your eyes peeled on all the important reporting channels there to see if both Millsap and Murray or either is in the lineup tonight. The last spot I want to talk about here is one which could be a little bit more dicey, but does have a 230 combined total here, one in which the Brooklyn Nets are a 7-point underdog at home. If this game is going to stay close, I would consider D'Angelo Russell a necessary piece. He's had some games against tough teams where he's done well, and I think the fact the Bucks allow a lot of 3-pointers could benefit him quite a bit, both as a shooter and as a playmaker. The Nets are definitely going to need some scoring from deep here, and again, this is a Bucks team who's allowing a league-high 35.5 3 attempts per game. One of Shabazz Napier, Joe Harris, maybe even Rodions Kurucs, with how he's been a little bit more trigger-happy recently, should be able to get going in this spot, and that is only if the Nets are able to keep the game close. But again, one of these guys, along with D'Angelo Russell, is probably going to have to get going here if the Nets are going to stay in this one, even at home versus the Bucks. A big reason why they're going to need that scoring to keep this one close is Giannis Antetokounmpo on the other side. He put up 72.5 fantasy points versus the Nets just a few weeks ago. He's obviously in a great spot here. There really isn't anybody who can stick with him on the defensive end and keep him off the boards, keep him from getting to the lane. Really a variety of ways that Giannis can kill these Nets over and over again. So that's why I think if you're going to play him and play him expecting to get all 4 quarters here, you're going to want a decent amount of Nets on the other side, at least 1 or 2, who are going to have to keep up the scoring just to keep this one competitive. It's also worth noting that Brook Lopez shot a season high in shot attempts last time versus Brooklyn, putting up 17 in that game, which was at home in Milwaukee. Again, this is a revenge spot versus him, one in which he's looked motivated both last year as a Laker and this year as a Buck. This is his first time in Brooklyn as a Buck. It's hard to say if he's going to continue to put up that many shots in this game, but it is something worth noting here, maybe worth having a little bit of exposure given that he's not expected to be particularly highly owned on today's slate. Eric Bledsoe, Chris Middleton, and Malcolm Brogdon are all fairly similar plays to me. They're both reasonably priced with some upside here, but also a pretty decent bit of risk of them just either getting barely to value or a little bit underneath it. I like the guys. I think there's nothing wrong with having them if the price fits and if you are playing enough guys in this game as though it's going to stay close. But again, there's some risk to those guys, and there could be enough reason to not go to them. Really, I think the spot here, load up on a few Nets and Giannis, or just avoid the game entirely and assume that it's going to blow out. So there we go. Those are my 4 corners for tonight's NBA slate, at least as it's looking right now in the middle of the day on the West Coast. Make sure to click that like button. Leave a comment down below, again, telling me your favorite play on the slate or anything you disagree with. I don't mind. You call me wrong if you want. Just be polite. Don't say any mean things because the internet's a place where nobody ever says mean things, and I refuse to believe otherwise. But thank you guys for watching this video. Again, click that like button, leave a comment down below. And of course, make sure to check the promo code I'm going to drop in right here. Use the promo code Switch and Hedge. You get 50% off your first month at Osmo.com. That's all the ownership projections, which I'm referencing in this video, as well as rankings from Osmo, who's the top player in the world, projections from Josh Engelman, that you could just plug right into Fantasy Cruncher and have a day with, no work on your end needed. So go check it out now. Use the promo code Switch and Hedge to get 50% off of your first month. And I'll be back again soon with more NBA breakdowns and these here 4 corners. So good luck.